Hi, everyone. I'm excited that you have all joined to the Small Business School Challenge. And I'm especially excited since I study and research new ways of organizing for innovation, such as this type of accelerated process that you guys are doing in 48 hours, trying to help businesses that usually such processes take much longer. So my name is Hila Lifshitz Asaf. I'm a professor at NYU Stern, and I will share with you a little bit about my research very quickly so you know what you can do with your team to make this process effective. So we'll start with some slides. So the topic of today's talk will be how can your team accelerate innovation without killing it? The innovation we're talking about in your case is the innovative, creative business strategy you're going to devise for new small businesses to recover, to deal with the crisis. And the secret sauce that I will discover and share with you is the minimal and adaptive coordination that my studies have found out. My name is Hila Lifshitz Asaf, my handle HDigInnovation, and feel free to ask me any questions or to contact me afterwards at h.ed@nyu.edu. Okay, so what can we think about when we think about accelerating innovation? Usually we think about hackathons, makeathons, innovation sprints, design sprints, right? How do these work? They're all over the place. Many companies are doing it, 48 hours, 24 hours challenge, 72 hours for processes that used to take longer. So let's talk a little bit about why and then quickly move to how. So why are we seeing all these accelerating innovation processes? Now it's clear we have contemporary ad hoc organizing to respond to emergencies and crises. And of course, the COVID crisis that we're all experiencing, and today we're specifically focusing on the business aspect of it. So this requires new ways of organizing. All of a sudden, different people from different organizations, students, professionals, experts, everyone are trying to come together and help. The second driver is that we actually have technologies that can make things faster, right? From 3D printing to Arduino, Raspberry Pi in the more hardware world, and to other software technologies that can make things really move faster. So what does it mean to accelerate innovation that I'm talking about? So it's taking a specific process that usually takes weeks, months, and all of a sudden do it in 48 hours. So what happens when you try to take a long process and all of a sudden do it in a much shorter amount of time? So we've been studying and doing research, as I said, about these ad hoc accelerated innovation processes. This study just came out in the Academy of Management Journal in press, and it's a study of assistive technology, hackathons, healthcare, health tech in makerspaces throughout the US. And we tracked each team minute by minute to really understand what is it around the new product development work process. And we were asking what differentiates a team that is able to successfully produce a working product or strategy, in your case, in such an extremely limited time frame, and those that fail. Especially now, this is very relevant, of course, and we're also studying this now. So I've been partnering, consulting, mentoring teams, etc., in the largest hackathon to fight COVID so far, which is the EU versus virus, more than 20,000 participants, 2,000 projects, 120 winning teams that we are now working with, the MIT COVID Challenge Series. And the next one that I will be participating in, and I'm inviting you all to join, is the NASA Space Apps COVID Challenge, end of this month. So what have I learned from studying all these teams and observing and helping them? I learned that teams have two main challenges. One is how to be creative under pressure. We know from the literature and from our own experience that under time pressure, we get to this time famine. We're like hungry for more time. And if I had more time, I would do that. And then we start thinking in a cognitive closed way, cognitive fixation, we call it in the literature. So that doesn't go well with creativity and innovation, right? So it's very hard to be creative when you're pressed for time. And the second thing is how to coordinate this work around the topic with your team members. So we know that when people organize all of a sudden together, they have a lot of coordination challenges. Who does what? who's responsible for what. So how can your team work well together to produce an innovative business strategy in 48 hours, particularly these days when it's done remotely, right? So in many of those situations, people start kind of who does what should we do, and how do they get to this well-aligned feeling that happens with teamwork when they work really well. So the bad news first and then the good news. So what have I found that happens very commonly that leads to failure? And it's important to listen since it's kind of counterintuitive. So first of all is how people deal with time pressure. So many teams, projects, people try to deal with time pressure by taking their best practices, processes that they know from their work, from McKinsey, from Google, from what we teach in business schools, and just try to do it on a faster scale. So if you have Agile, Scrum methodology, for instance, and you're used to meeting once a day, you're meeting once an hour during the 10 minutes. Or if you think about the 5 phases of writing a new business strategy for a startup, you're doing kind of each in 2 hours. And that's not going to work. You need to redesign to do a completely different process. You can't just compress existing processes to kind of a tighter time frame. That's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2, which that's the counterintuitive part, is around the team coordination. So actually dealing with the challenge of coordinating by trying to be fully and clearly coordinated leads to failure. So I will explain more about it soon because I know it may sound weird. So what have we found that works, right? So 2 things you need to remember. The first one, as I said, is do not try to compress the regular processing, but instead try to understand and kind of assume that this requires a different process, a very different and new process that will emerge as you run and kind of in these 48 hours and try to work together. And the second important part, which I would like to focus on today, is do not try to fully coordinate with the other team members. Under such a short amount of time, when you do not always know each other very well, and the division of labor is not clear, no clear leadership, and no one wants to be usually a clear leader in such situations, we want to work freely, it's not effective to try to have beautiful, full coordination. Instead, what you need to do is to adopt what we call minimal and adaptive coordination. And I give here kind of some images from sailing. So if those of you who have done some sailing, and those of you who haven't, but we can talk a little bit around these terms. So imagine kind of trying to sail when it's all foggy, since that's how it feels sometimes when you start these things. You're like, what are we going to do? How it's going to look like? What is the end product in 48 hours is going to be there? So that's how it's going to feel, and that's okay. And what should we do about navigating together to get to, the land and not to have this fog? So minimal and adaptive coordination, that's the secret sauce. What does it mean, minimal? So instead of what we usually tell you when you start teamwork to fully align and to know exactly kind of what is the end product that you're going to give, here we're telling you the opposite. So start with only a high level solution, rough idea of what you're going to do. Don't make it too detailed, too specific when you're starting your work process. And then quickly jump to dividing the work and starting to work in couples or alone. Of course, it's better if you can in couples, but do not spend more than 1 hour on this initial discussion. So these are just examples from makeathons and quotes that I've been, but I really want to stress this point. Do not try to convince each other and get to a clear, fully detailed solution. Just the minimum that is required for all of you to make sure you understand each other and you have the minimum basis for coordination. Then, what is the adaptive coordination part? What does that mean? So you start with minimum, but you gradually increase it and adapt. So again, with the sailing analogy, if we think about 2 different sailing strategies, one is to think about, this is the course, we're going to get there, so that's called kind of course setting, right? That's not what we're doing because we don't know exactly where we're going to get, right? We're in this fog. So what we're doing instead is called tacking, right? You're feeling the wind, you're sensing how does it feel, and then you're adjusting. So the wind here is the work process, and you have to check swiftly and quickly with the other team members. So not full discussions with other team members, but quickly check, swiftly sense where are they, and then adjust yourself to their workflow. how does it feel to do this minimal adaptive coordination? It feels very different. So you should know if your team is doing it, if it feels very messy in the beginning, and then slowly things start clearing out. Instead of the opposite. If you feel in the beginning of this process that you got it under control and it's all very organized, and only in the end it will get messy, that's what we want to avoid, right? So from my experience, I can tell you it's better to feel messy in the beginning and slowly coordinate better. So start with the fog, and then hopefully in the end, you'll see the land very clearly. How do we do it when we are remote? So the one important condition that this minimal and adaptive coordination can work with is if you see each other, right? When you're sailing, when you're working together, you gotta see each other to adjust, to feel the wind. So that's each other's work. So Zoom open, Slack open, use any video way that you want to, any video medium that you want to communicate, and shared work documents, Google Slides, Google spreadsheets, whatever is shared, and make the work visible so each of the team members can see what you're doing. And I know it's not fun, and that's the hard part, because people want to share with others only when it's good. Do not wait until your work is perfect, otherwise it will be too late. So just work on something together, and then you have the ability to kind of adapt to each other and be more agile. And after this weekend, if you feel like it, I have created this fun animated video for those of you who will need to manage innovation remotely also. And so specifically for that. So I'll send you that with my slide. And again, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer or send you the full papers if you want to read more or talk about digital strategy courses or how to help those small businesses. So best of luck, and I'll see you on Saturdays. Whoever wants to do some pitch practices with me, I'll be happy to help.